Officers were also responding to that call for service at the same time. There was a landscaper that was doing his work that was shot at. And fortunately,
News special report. I'm Tony DeCopel. We're coming on the air as 2 suspects are dead after a shooting at the Islamic Center of San Diego. It's a center that includes a school, but police say all kids are safe at this hour. 3 adults are dead at the scene. This is the largest mosque in San Diego County, and San Diego police just gave an update. Let's listen to that.
Loved ones. We have 3 confirmed adults that are deceased at the Islamic Center. There is a lot of preliminary information that we're going to try to highlight and cover, but understand it's going to take us some time to get accurate information out to everyone. Here's what we know so far. At about 11:43, we received a call of an active shooter at the Islamic Center. Within 4 minutes, officers arrived on scene and observed immediately 3 deceased, what appeared to be deceased victims out in front. They immediately began to deploy with an active shooter response into the mosque and adjacent school. At about the same time, we began to receive calls from just a couple blocks away that we had more active gunfire. Officers were also responding to that call for service at the same time. There was a landscaper that was doing his work that was shot at and fortunately was not hit. That was at about the 7100 block of Salerno, which is just a couple blocks from here. Moments later, at the 3800 block of Hatton, officers were called to that location where they found a vehicle in the middle of the street with who we believe to be the shooters in this incident, both deceased. The circumstances that led up to this and the details of what happened and exactly which time it happened will come out in the days ahead. I can tell you, this is, in 28 years, this is the most dynamic and impressive response that I have ever seen in policing. We have every single police officer available throughout our county that dropped what they're doing and did exactly what they're trained to do: run towards gunfire. I could not be more proud, and I cannot express the gratitude, the willingness to step into harm's way in a moment like this. And I tell you what got me. Watching the kids come running out. Just thankful to be alive. I want to bring up Mark Remley from the FBI. Because of the Islamic Center location, we are considering this a hate crime until it's not. And at this point, we're going to work closely with the FBI to make sure that we are matching all the resources that we need for this investigation. So, Mark?
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Brennan. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI San Diego field office. Today, the FBI responded to assist our local law enforcement partners at the Islamic Center of San Diego. This was based on reports of an active shooter. As the chief said, what we know at this time is that there are 3 deceased adult males, and those are the presumed victims at this time. On behalf behalf of the FBI, we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of the victims of this tragic incident. There were 2 subjects, both teenagers, and both are confirmed deceased. I want to thank our local law enforcement partners for their quick response that undoubtedly saved the additional loss of life. The FBI is meticulously assessing the situation and is prepared to employ every resource we have to uncover the facts of this incident. No community should have to go through such a tragic incident, but we will work tirelessly until we learn the truth. We have on scene a number of special agents, task force officers, our evidence response personnel, victim specialists, and many more. As we work through this investigation, we ask for your patience to determine any motive and facts associated with the shooting. The FBI continues to ask for the public's help in providing any information that could help us resolve this investigation, and we remind the public that any detail, no matter how small, could be useful. The FBI has set up additional media tip line for information regarding the shooting. We ask that the public submit their tips to FBI.gov or call 1-800-CALL-FBI with any information.
You've been listening to law enforcement giving an update on an incident at the Islamic Center of San Diego this afternoon. 3 adults dead at the scene. 2 shooters, what they believe to be the shooters, dead as well, outside of a vehicle or near a vehicle nearby. Also listening in with me is CBS News national correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti, who's following the story for us. Jonathan, you were listening along with me. What stood out to you?
Yeah, immediately, Tony, officials declaring this a hate crime. They are treating it as such. They're working with the FBI as this investigation continues. In terms of what happened, according to them, with this timeline just before noon today, they say these 2 gunmen stormed a mosque at the center, opening fire multiple times before then fleeing in a vehicle where they continued to carry out opening fire in a nearby neighborhood before they were, quote unquote, neutralized. Officials confirming that both of the gunmen have been killed. It appears the threat has been contained, but not before these 2 gunmen injured multiple people. At least 3 adults confirmed, as you mentioned, killed in this. I just want to give you a scene setter because this is happening at the Islamic Center of San Diego. It's located just 9 miles outside of the city. It is the largest mosque in the county. There is also a school on that sprawling property. There was a lot of concern early on about children at that school. We saw an incredible police presence. We couldn't even count all of the squad cars. And some pretty emotional video that we saw earlier, children were being escorted out holding hands by police. We can tell you that a representative from the mosque posted a video saying that children, students, none of them were injured. Again, so many questions remain as officials now confirming 2 gunmen, both have been, quote unquote, neutralized, killed, and 3 victims sadly killed as well in this shooting, as this remains very much a developing story, Tony.
Jonathan, thank you very much. With me also is Anna Schechter. She oversees our crime and public safety unit. Anna, we heard the officer there from San Diego say they're treating this as a hate crime until it isn't. What else stood out to you?
Well, just the fact that the suspects are teenagers and that they were in a vehicle. We've actually seen the photo of their vehicle. It's a white vehicle, and their bodies were found next to that vehicle. So my law enforcement sources are assuming that they took their own lives. There was a gardener who was also shot, not hit, thankfully. This could have been so much worse. The fact that 3 tragic deaths, but all those children that were marched outside that thankfully survived, just could have been so much worse.
And the officer there saying that the moment that got him was seeing all of those kids coming out of the school, just happy to be alive. He also talked about 28 years there with the San Diego Police Department and never seeing a more instantaneous or dynamic reaction from law enforcement.
Well, everybody's on a heightened threat alert. So even over the last couple of years. But since the outbreak of this most recent war, you've got a shooting at a mosque, you're going to immediately have the FBI field office, multiple law enforcement agencies rushing to support this effort. And it was a dynamic, fluid situation. You had 911 calls coming in from the mosque. You had 911 calls coming in from a few blocks away. So when I read that, I'm thinking, okay, the 2 suspects went in, fired shots, killed those 3 people inside the mosque, then left and went and carried out more shootings. Thankfully, no one was hit, and then potentially took their own lives. They're still trying to pin down if anybody shot them or if they took their own lives, but my sources are telling me it appears that they took their own lives.
Yeah, and they're looking for why this happened,
Absolutely.
what may have motivated it. Those are questions for the days ahead. Anna, thank you very much. Jonathan, thank you again to you. To recap, 3 adults, 2 suspects are dead after an attack at the Islamic Center of San Diego. Police are considering this a hate crime. That's leading their investigation. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and we'll have a complete wrap-up tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Tony DeCopel.
I'm Nicole Killian in Washington, and you've been listening to a CBS News special report. San Diego law enforcement just provided an update on the shooting at an Islamic center. At least 3 victims are dead. 2 suspected shooters are also dead. We're told all children who were inside, though, are confirmed safe. We want to go straight to CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd. She is also the former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism at the Department of Homeland Security. And Sam, we heard from law enforcement officials there on the ground, as well as from the FBI, that they're investigating this as a hate crime. Where does this investigation go from here?
Well, at this point, Nicole, we should assume that the subjects are going to be identified as quickly as possible, and certainly that there will be warrants garnered also as quickly as possible to understand the subjects' patterns of behavior leading up to this incident, whom they were in contact with. There will be ballistic and forensic evidence that is collected to ascertain where the firearms were purchased, as well as ultimately what the motivation was that led these 2 individuals to allegedly go and shoot at the Islamic Center. Certainly, of course, their social media profiles will be reviewed to see if there's any nexus to, for example, foreign terrorism or other individuals in the United States. But I do want to highlight one thing. In my experience as Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism, we work tirelessly with faith-based institutions all across the country, as well as federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, to ensure that if an incident like this did play out, that the response time was as quick as it possibly could be. And we understand that the response time in this case was 4 minutes. Certainly 4 very long minutes for those that were implicated, but 4 minutes. So it does appear that that law enforcement response was quite quick. And what we don't know yet as well is whether there were security guards and other physical hardening mechanisms at the Islamic Center that prevented this horrific incident from being even worse. So a lot of unanswered questions, but the investigation is just beginning. We may not know the subjects' identities for some period of time. So we need to be patient in that respect to wait to hear more details.
And I want to also bring into the conversation now CBS News senior coordinator, producer for crime and public safety, Anna Schechter, who joins us now. And I know you were listening to that press conference a short time ago. What stood out to you?
Well, the fact that there are 2 suspects, both deceased. I've seen a photo of them next to their vehicle, and they're teenagers. So very young suspects. And it appears preliminarily, my sources are telling me, it appears that they took their own lives. This was a very fluid situation where you had 911 calls coming in at 11:43 a.m. from the mosque. And then at the same time, the shooters had left. So calls coming in from a few blocks away. And we learned that the suspects had fired at someone doing work in a yard who thankfully wasn't hit. So what strikes me is just how much worse this could have been. We've heard from eyewitnesses who heard upwards of 30 shots. It's unclear if all of those were fired by the suspects or if a security guard who we know was hit at one point also fired shots, but lots of gunfire in a very short amount of time, Nicole.
And I want to turn back to you, Sam. You know, we also heard from the FBI official who was there on the ground. He, even though, again, you know, the local police chief says he believes this is a hate crime, at the same time, this FBI official said that they are still asking for patience to determine a motive. So kind of how do you square those two things? He also asked the public for information. So, you know, what does that tell you about how law enforcement officials are going about this?
Well, the FBI agent who briefed the public indicated that they're treating this as a hate crime investigation until it isn't, based on the fact that this incident, this horrific incident, took place at a very large mosque as well. The mosque, as our viewers may not know, also houses a school, other Islamic cultural activities, and more. A hate crime is really a crime that is motivated by an offender's bias against a victim or victims' actual or perceived affiliation with certain protected categories like religion, like sex, and other matters. It may be the case that there was some other motivation in play here. It could be a personal grievance, but because this horrific incident did occur at this mosque, they're treating it as a hate crime at this time until new evidence surfaces that could discount that. But what that means in practice is that there are specialized agents within the FBI that will be deploying to more than likely lead this investigation in coordination with state and local partners. So we should assume that this will be an investigation with law enforcement officials from all levels of government. At some point, intelligence professionals may get looped in as well, but it will be a multi-layered campaign with various a multi-layered investigation with various layers of law enforcement jurisdictions involved.
And Anna, I want to turn back to you. I know you said this situation could be much worse. And, you know, again, certainly good news that no children were harmed in this incident. But talk to me about security and whether or not you expect security could be tightened at institutions like this going forward.
Well, they had already been tightened. Just a couple of months ago, you had the largest temple in Michigan attacked. And it was filled with children who were at an early childhood education program. Thankfully, they all got out safe as well. Similar outcome to this, where you had school children who thankfully got out. What I read from this, knowing that a security guard was hit, is that these institutions have amped up their security. You had a security guard who was trained, who appeared to address the threat because he was hit, possibly killed, according to my sources. So what I'm seeing is security teams in touch with local law enforcement regularly because they know the threat is so high. We have been in a heightened threat environment for more than 2 years, almost 3 years. And now, since the onslaught of the latest war with Iran in late February, when that kicked off, counterterror teams are on even higher alert because the threat is so significant to all houses of worship of all religions. And you see an increased physical presence, and that might have led to this outcome that could have been so much worse. We lost 3 people tragically, but no children were killed. It could have been so much worse, as you said, Nicole.
All right, Anna Schechter and Sam Vinograd, we want to thank you so much for joining us, and certainly we'll come back to you if developments warrant. Turning now to politics, President Trump is facing a critical test this week with primaries in 6 states, some of which could show his influence on the party he leads. Democrats hope that voters will express their displeasure with the president and his policies in the voting booth. On Tuesday night, we'll see if that's the case. But for now, a new CBS News poll shows the president's numbers are heading in the wrong direction on a number of key issues. The president's job approval stands at just 37%. It is the lowest